Morning God First. We're in a series called Countercultural, and we're journeying with the Apostle Peter through his first letter to what he calls the chosen exiles, those Christians living in modern day Turkey who are outsiders, as it were, to the prevailing pagan and Roman culture. And but Peter's letter tells us that cultural isolation is not to be the route taken by the Christian community. It is to live its life openly in the midst of an unbelieving world, and just as openly to be prepared to explain reasons for it. And what we're going to look at today is three reasons that Peter gives for us to be those who live, giving a reason for the hope that's in us, as live as gospel evangelists to the culture. So the first thing that Peter says is our lives are gospel events. In 1 Peter 2:12 he says this: live such good lives among the pagans that though they accuse you of doing wrong, they may see your good deeds and glorify God on the day he visits us. For it is God's will that by doing good you'll silence the ignorant talk of foolish people. And Peter's exhortation is still relevant today. We're surrounded by a culture that's hostile, and being a Jesus follower draws accusing fingers, and how we live our lives is an incredibly powerful demonstration of the truth of the gospel. I remember when being a Christian, people saw you as a good person, but now try offering a Christian perspective on the hot button issues of 21st century culture. And with YouTube listening, I'm not going to mention what they are, but try and mention those issues and you will find accusing fingers pointing at you. You will find the accusation that you're hypocritical, or that you're a bigot, or that you're not inclusive. But Peter doesn't suggest that we placard the abortion clinic, but encourages us to live good lives. The biggest accusation often aimed at Christians is hypocrisy, and sadly that's often true. Vicar who preaches family values has steamy affair, or televangelist buys fourth private jet scream the tabloid headlines. And Paul's letter to the Romans calls out the self-righteous hypocrites in the church. You who pass judgment on someone else, you're condemning yourself, because you who pass judgment do the same things. And so actually what Peter's calling is not for a campaign, but he's calling for personal godliness and goodness, and that must precede our evangelism. It's often said, take care how you live, as your life may be the only Bible that people ever read. Peter goes on to exhort his readers, be committed citizens, the friendliest neighbours and the most diligent employers, and that's what Stan talked about a few weeks ago, and to have loving marriages, and that's what Steve and Joe tackled that, and to have great families, and I tackled that on Father's Day, and Peter is saying those mundane, as it were, things of work and family and marriage are a demonstration of the gospel. They're gospel events. Peter, as we said, live such good lives among the pagans that though they accuse you of doing good, they may see your good deeds and glorify God on the day he visits. Maybe Peter had in mind the Sermon on the Mount, where Jesus says, "You're the light of the world." A city built on a hill cannot be hidden. Neither do people light a lamp and put it under a bowl. Instead, they put it on a stand, and it gives light to the whole house. And it gives light to everyone in the house. In the same way, let your light shine before others, that they may see your good deeds and glorify your Father in heaven. Christian followers are meant to be visibly different. We're meant to be visibly different by how we live. When I was a kid, though, it seemed that being a Christian was all about being off the pace when it came to fashion and music, and not going within a mile of the pub, and not mixing with non-Christians. But now it feels like we've kind of realised that no, we need to be part of the culture. But almost we're so keen to be hip and trendy, so keen to blend in and be accepted, so keen to hide, so keen that we hide the bright light of what the gospel has done in us, the inward change of the power of the gospel. We hide it under the bowl of conformity. And Peter says, no, we need to live our lives visibly among the community that's around us. And we tend to think when Peter says we are to show our good deeds, we tend to think in the individualist culture that it's me. I need to show my good deeds, you show your good deeds. But actually, he's talking collectively. He's exhorting the Christian community collectively. Leslie Newbegin says the gospel community is the interpreter of the gospel. And Paul Hunting contacted me this week and said, quoting John 13, that, let us love one another. By this, all men will know that you are my disciples, if you have love one to another. In other words, there's a sense of the way we interact with each other and the way we interact with the world shows that we're disciples. It's our good deeds that show that God is to be praised. And so, and the Christian community is expected to do good deeds. The secular world expects Christians to do good deeds. It expects us to do good deeds, and it's great that churches run the nation's food banks, and it was great because of your generosity we're able to give £1,000 to Cheltenham Food Bank. And I do encourage you, if you thought about volunteering at Cheltenham Food Bank, get involved. Go down to Elim, get involved. It's great that Christians Against Poverty, who we've partnered with in the past, is the best debt relief charity in the country. It's great that Christians are at the forefront of Hope for Justice and raising awareness of sex trafficking in Cheltenham during Race Week. It's great that we've got involved in that. And it's great that Christians give money to the poor. Thank you, those people that gave. Last week to Nepal, we've raised over £1,000 last week. I'd love us to raise 3,000 or 4,000. So if you haven't given to Nepal, do that. But our good deeds are visible. It's meant to be. That's the sort of thing that people expect us to do. And it's not that we just do outward good deeds while inwardly we suffer from hypocrisy. No, we're the ones who collectively, we don't cheat our employers. We're not unfaithful in our relationships. We don't lie or speak badly of others to make ourselves look better. We love our neighbours as ourselves. Peter is confident that our lives lived out in the gospel community will help turn hostile pagan unbelievers into worshippers of God. They will see your good deeds and glorify God on the day he visits. Tim Chester writes, it's not that ordinary Christians live good lives to enable us to invite our friends to evangelistic events. Our lives are evangelistic events. So Peter says, live good lives among the pagans. It's evangelistically powerful. The second thing he says in chapter 3 is that our words have gospel power. 1 Peter 3:14. Do not fear what they fear, and do not be frightened, but in your hearts worship and treasure Christ as Lord. Always be prepared to give an answer to everyone who asks you for the reason that's hope within you. But do this with gentleness and respect, keeping a clear conscience, so that those who speak maliciously against your good behaviour in Christ may be shamed by their slander. Our collective good behaviour, our shared sense of hope in Jesus will provoke a response. Sometimes it's a negative response, but actually it often provokes questions. Why are you so encouraging and positive at work? Why do you seem so strong in the face of cancer? Why have you got such great friends? Why do you not seem to be anxious? Peter says, always be prepared to give an answer. But he also says, do not fear what they fear. What do people fear? I think what people fear most is people. You know, and I know, the temptation not to speak the gospel because we fear people. Because we're ashamed of what people might think of us. Elliot Clark, in his book on 1 Peter called Evangelism in Exiles, says this. It's a challenging quote. We don't evangelize because of the expected social and emotional ramifications for us. If we're honest, the real reason we don't preach the gospel to our neighbours is because we don't want to be embarrassed. For many of us, when it comes to personal evangelism, comfort has usurped our calling. We speak the gospel when it seems appropriate. We open our mouths when we perceive a willing audience. We'll bring up the topic of faith as long as it doesn't threaten our image or our credibility or our relationships. If we made an honest assessment, we'd have to admit we're often ashamed of our Lord. And such silence shames our witness. Challenging. Paul in his letter to the Romans unashamedly says in the boldest terms, I'm not ashamed of the gospel because it's the power of God to those who are being saved. But Peter doesn't suggest an upload of boldness from a talk on evangelism. Often when I hear talks on evangelism, what I don't feel is empowered. I often feel, well, you're a great evangelist and you tell your friends, but I'm really rubbish. And it doesn't seem to help. I just feel condemned. What we really need, says Peter, is a download of worship from God's throne. In one sense, it says, in your hearts, revere or honour Christ as Lord. And always be prepared to give a reason for the hope that's in you. There's a link between our worship and our witness. John Piper, in his really excellent book, Let the Nations Be Glad, a book on global missions, in his intro, the first 2 pages are gold. I could have read you them all, but basically he says this. Missions, or evangelism, missions is not the ultimate goal of the church. Worship is. Missions exist because worship doesn't. When this age is over and the countless millions of the redeemed fall on their faces before the throne of God, mission will be no more. It's a temporary imperative, but worship abides forever. He goes on. So worship is the fuel of mission. Passion for God in worship precedes the offer of God in proclamation. You cannot commend what you do not treasure. When the true flame of worship burns with the heat of God's true worth, the light of mission will shine bright to the nations, he says. When passion for God is weak, zeal for mission will be weak. Even outsiders feel the disparity between the boldness of our gospel claims and the blandness of our engagement with God. Brilliant but challenging. Where passion for God is weak, zeal for mission is weak. Where passion for God is strong, proclamation takes place. You cannot commend what you don't treasure. Proverbs says that out of the heart the mouth speaks. And if the Western church in general, and maybe God First in particular, and maybe you or I, have a mission problem, perhaps the root of it is a worship problem. But one thing my soul really thirsts for in this COVID-19 season is to lift my voice in worship together with you, my friends, and feel the kindling passion for God, to feel that sense of worship. And we've been served really well by our musicians, but there's something about the collectiveness of worship. But I want that worship, in that desire to worship again, to overflow in gospel boldness. Peter himself knew the transformation from fearfully ashamed and denying Jesus to a servant girl to that moment when, full of the Holy Spirit, boldly proclaiming the gospel to thousands on the day of Pentecost. That transformation can be our experience. Let's always be prepared to give an answer to everyone who asks you for the reason that's hope within. There should be a bubbling hope within. There should be a glowing sense of heat and worship that makes people think, what are you like? Not that you're weird, but you're passionate. Now, when it says always give an answer when everyone asks you, Peter isn't suggesting that we never initiate a spiritual conversation or never challenge anything others say. But he is saying we need to be prepared and take time to equip ourselves to explain the good news of Jesus. Could you explain the gospel to someone in 3 minutes? Could you give a reason for the hope that's in you? Peter says we need to be prepared. I think Glenn Scrivener's 321 video, The Story of God, the World in You, is an excellent way to kind of learn a 3-minute presentation of the gospel. Why not take 3 minutes at the end of this morning to watch it? And I think it's also good for us to be able to offer answers to some of the big hot button questions that are implicit in our cultural moment. You know, we need to train ourselves and equip ourselves to answer, how do you know God exists? Hasn't scientists disproved God? Why does God care who sleep with? How could a loving God allow so much suffering? How could Jesus rise from the dead? What difference does the cross make today? I've personally found the evidence of the Christian faith hasn't weakened my faith, it's strengthened it. I mean, I recommend books like this. Tim Keller, The Reason for God, Belief in an Age of Skepticism. Or this newer book by Rebecca McLaughlin, Confronting Christianity, 12 Hard Questions the Christian Faith Must Answer. Books like that help you to kind of understand the compelling evidence of the gospel. And if we're compelled by that, then that'll help us to explain the gospel. But we need to be prepared to give a reason, a logical reason, a planned reason for the hope that's in us. But also, sometimes we might not be strong at that, but actually we've all got the power of our personal story. We can always give a reason for our personal story. There's something really, really powerful in our culture about being able to just tell your story in 2-3 minutes, your gospel story. And it was great to have Fleur and Lena this morning tell their gospel stories to us, and I'm sure you could tell your gospel story. But if there's a moment, could you present it in a way that's coherent and compelling? But speaking about Jesus is not just about what you say, even though we need to prepare. Peter also says it's about how you say it. Always be prepared to give an answer to everyone. And he says, do this with gentleness and respect, keeping a clear conscience. Rather than being intimidated by whatever opposition his readers encounter in their society, Peter wants them to respond with a positive and effective explanation of the gospel. Instead of allowing fear to drive us to use the same tactics of insult and malicious talk used by opponents of Christianity, we are to respond in a way that's beyond reproach. The big nose when speaking about our faith is to be overly forceful and impatient rather than gentle, to attack the person rather than to respectfully listen and discuss their objections, to aim to win the argument rather than win a hearing for gospel and win souls. Peter knows from experience being gentle and respectful defeats the malicious talk of those who belie the faith. So the second thing is we need to speak. Our words have gospel power. And thirdly, and quickly, our homes have gospel potential. The third thing Peter encourages the chosen exiles is to, in 1 Peter 4:9, is to offer hospitality to one another. Hospitality literally means love for outsiders, for strangers, for the other. It implies inviting people who are not Christians into our homes. I mean, we could start by inviting people who are Christians into our homes, and let's be proactive with that. But ultimately, we need to invite non-Christians into our homes. As such, the ministry of hospitality is essential to gospel mission. And we have often too often narrowed down evangelism to inviting people to church events where someone else is going to share the gospel. And obviously, God First, we're not against such invitations. It's great that people have invited their friends on Alpha and they're hearing the gospel on videos from HTB and stuff. But actually, I think for Peter, he'd encourage us to think about changing the venue. To change the venue from church buildings to our own tables. And actually, as lockdown is lifted and the church buildings are still closed in many ways, particularly for us at God First, then I want to encourage us to open up our tables. God First started in a home, and we must never lose that connection to our homes. Our God First communities and our homes are to be hubs of hospitality. And as lockdown has been lifted, let's do that. Let's make our own tables the centre of the church. Let's invite our friends who don't know Jesus, who may never cross the threshold of a church building or a church service, over the threshold of our homes into our tables and hopefully into life with Jesus. This is the way of Jesus. What Peter has described is the way of Jesus. Jesus' life is the ultimate gospel event. Jesus is the chosen one who lived amongst us, an outsider in the world he created. He lived a life of stunning goodness and overflowing miraculous good works and great acts of kindness. We saw his good deeds and praised his Father in heaven. We might ask for a sign. God, would you come and do something? But Jesus' life is a sign that God exists. It's a sign that the gospel is true. It's a sign to a pagan culture that won't have Jesus. If they'd only look, they'd find his good works and his life compelling. If you're not a Christian, you're joining us this morning, you're incredibly welcome. But I invite you to read the Gospel of Mark or the Gospel of Luke or the Gospel of John. And just find out what an amazing guy Jesus is. The more you read of him, the more you'll see his good deeds and learn to praise his Father in heaven. And secondly, Jesus' words have ultimate gospel power. Jesus says, if you've seen me, you've seen the Father. Come follow me. Son, your sins are forgiven. Peace be still. Salvation has come to this house. It is finished. Receive the Holy Spirit. Today, you'll be with me in paradise. And just as our words have gospel power, we need to follow the Jesus words, follow the words of Jesus, speak them into other people's lives so that they will feel the power of the gospel. We need to give a reason for the hope that's in us. And lastly, yes, Jesus invites us into his home, into his family, the Trinity, Father, Son and Spirit, into that relationship as the ultimate act of hospitality, the ultimate act of welcoming outsiders. He invites us to the togetherness of his table. He invites us into the oneness with his Father. And although we can't break bread on our own because it's a community meal, he invites us when we're together to say, take, eat, this is my body broken for you. This is my blood poured out for you. Jesus invites us to the table. Father, I pray that you would stir us to be missionaries to our culture, evangelists in exile. I pray our lives and our words and our open homes and hearts would transform. Lord, I pray where there's a mission problem, give us passion for you. Give us a sense of your presence. Give us a sense of worshipping you, that we would commend you, our Lord, who we deeply treasure. Amen. Thanks for listening, God First. Great to be with you. See you soon.